We have so many stories in our lives, but our stories are not always heard. On the Hear My True Story podcast, we tell our own true stories.
Before the white car parked, our head teacher had scattered. Looking at him, I could only see his tie that was flying backwards, waving at us, and he disappeared in thin air.
I want to share my life story. I want to share my voice with the people because I know that just a small joke I can tell through this podcast, it will make someone smile.
When you ask me what I fear most in life, I would definitely respond to you and say it's fear itself.
We are fighting for togetherness. We are fighting for equal rights. We are fighting to end injustice.
You don't have to be a storyteller or writer because, guess what? Life writes the best stories.
Hear my true story.
This is your favorite time of the week with your number one podcast.
Hear my true story.
Yeah, our dear listener, thank you so much for joining us this week again. It is me, your host, Otako, on this wonderful podcast, Hear My True Story. Wow, it is so interesting to have you guys every week when you join us and listen to this wonderful podcast. Anyway, for those who are just joining us this week, I would like to tell you this is Hear My True Story podcast. Here we tell stories of people, we share wonderful true stories, and we also have wonderful conversations. And also we host people and they share their own personal stories. And for this week, we have a wonderful conversation. It is an old conversation. We had it in the year 2022, maybe it was in April, where we hosted this guest and he talked so much about living here in Europe, mainly living here in Germany, and what he does. And what is so special about this is that it is in the month of February, where we celebrate the Black History Month. And for this month, we decided as a podcast to share wonderful conversations that we had with our guests, we had with our African Black people living in Europe, all the people who are staying here in Germany, and they have wonderful, inspiring stories that can inspire other Black people living in Germany. And for that reason, we hosted Edwin Matovu in the year 2022. It was in April when we shared this wonderful conversation, which was really relevant, and it is still relevant for anyone who's listening to this episode for the first time. It will be new to you. And if you have listened to this episode before on this podcast, yeah, it is old, but every time you listen to it, it gives you a new experience, a new way of thinking about things. And for that reason, I would like to say, you're still on this wonderful episode, on this podcast, you listen to it, and if you enjoy it, it will be grateful for you to subscribe and maybe share with a friend to know about this wonderful podcast.
Your favorite podcast is here.
Hear my true story.
Jambo, 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 jambo. Twagenda mu kibira okunoga ebibala twali tubinoga sisi ne tulengera essajja sisi lyali ddene nnyo sisi ng'ate nga ggwambu sisi ne litugoba emisinde sisi ne tukaba n'amaziga sisi mwesirikira abaana sisi sijja kubalya sisi nja kulya bali abakulu sisi abagenda n'emugga jambo 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 Jambo, 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 jambo.
Wow, Edwin Matovu.
Yeah,
I'm happy to have you again on our podcast.
it is always my pleasure.
But by the way, our listeners, if you don't know, the music that was done by this, the music that you hear in this podcast was done by Edwin Matovu. I like that song in the beginning of the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for that opportunity. I always listen to that song on every podcast you put there, and I feel like I'm really pressured to be part of this.
I mean, maybe you can sample it to me again.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you got the instrumental, so you never got the original song, how it goes with the lyrics and everything, yeah. But I can try with only the first kind of humming. Ha, ha, oh, oh. Yeah, and of course, when you want to find this song, you can find it in all music platforms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The song is all over.
Yeah.
It's all over Spotify,
Yeah.
Google Music, or Apple Music.
Yeah.
I mean, it is all over.
Yeah, I'm really pleased that many people have agreed and they're supporting the music we do in this kind of environment we're in. I'm really.
Yeah, I see that. And actually, me as a person and also as a black man living in Europe and here in a very big white community, I tend to support content that is done by fellow black people because I know the only empowerment that can be done is by empowering ourselves and empowering other people.
Yeah.
And by supporting their creativity, their kind of art. And I listen to your music most of the times when I'm going to work on my bicycle, at home.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's so
And
great.
also, I also tell friends that, guys, listen to this music. I like the music.
Thank you so much.
But before
it's
we
my
go
pleasure.
on, I would like you to introduce yourself. to the
Yeah.
listeners.
Yeah, my name is Matovu Edwin. I'm a Ugandan, and I'm at the moment living in Germany, in Kassel. I work as a teacher at the Waldorf School here in Kassel. And of course, I'm a musician, I'm an artist, I'm a dancer. So I do a lot of art around. And yeah, I think that's me.
And you're a teacher of what?
Yeah, I do class teacher and also music. And in German, they call it another thing of like Bewegung, like movements. Like they're also teaching dance. It is part of our school. Yeah.
Curriculum.
Yeah. So I'm all around. I help in main classes because we have main classes. Our clusters of teaching is kind of different from the public schools because Waldorf schools have a different way of teaching, of approaching education and bringing the content to students. So we have, if you have time, I can a little bit give the overview of the school, how it operates.
Yeah, please. That is so nice to have this opportunity to give me the overview of how it works with the world of school. Yeah.
So for the Waldorf school, where I work, we have like from, it's called in German Grundschule, that is primary school, compared to where I come from, Uganda. This is from first grade, to, let me say, that is 13th grade. That's when they get like Abitur. So, but they have other students who cannot do Abitur and they do other kind of Abschluss. So, but where I work from, because I started being a class teacher and I focused also to be as a music teacher according to the master's degree I had. So what I do at school, I concentrate much more on being a class teacher. So I help, I'm like an assistant at the moment, and also have some classes I take for music. And for our school is a little bit special. It has an international class. International class where we find kids from Asia or from Africa or from where they want to come and they get like Abschluss. My English is a little bit now becoming also a problem because of studying more Deutsch and speaking. So Abschluss, maybe end of school certificate. So mainly I work with also those international students because I'm also an international from Uganda and here. And I teach them music, I teach them dance, I teach them choreography. Many artistic stuff I do with that class, and it is like my main work at school, working with them. But of course, I also work with other German classes, especially with Bewegung.
Okay.
Yeah, and assisting in different music classes with the rhythms, with body percussions, many things.
Many things.
Yeah, at school. Yeah.
I think if you get time, you'd come and say so much about
the
how
system.
The system and how it works.
Yeah,
I'm so really happy for you, my brother, because being a teacher here in German is not something easy that can just come on a silver plate.
Yeah.
You need to really work for it, and you have achieved. And because of that, I had to call you again and say if we can be on this podcast. It's February 2022 now.
Yeah.
I don't know whenever someone's listening to this podcast, it may be some years. But do you know what is about February?
I don't know. I really don't go much knowing what's happening, but I had something like Black History Month, which is happening.
Yeah.
But of course, I personally, I have a problem with the word black.
Okay.
Personally, I have a problem with it, but...
Do you have a problem with it in terms of black, said in English, or is it schwarz, as the word is so?
Yeah.
Which is it, the word, or is it the things that come along with the word?
Of course, the things which come along with the word black, or schwarz in English, in Deutsch. So, because everything which is bad, everything which is devil, if you want to refer to something which is devil, something which really negative, it is about black. And something which is white, it is something which is holy, something which is good, something which you like for. And then I choose myself, if I want to really, to empower myself, calling myself black. I'm contradicting myself, and I'm the same person who comes out and...
So how do you call yourself?
I'm calling myself a Ugandan.
A Ugandan,
because,
okay.
Yeah.
That's nice to hear. So...
Yeah.
I'm happy to meet you, my brother, a Ugandan, living in Europe, in German.
Yeah.
And in case I mentioned black, and you are not...
I can understand. It's not like...
I'm not saying it with the negativity around it.
Yeah.
And I know I'm also a Ugandan, and I'm also a black man living in German. And I don't have a problem with saying myself black because, yes, it's positivity that I believe in it.
Okay.
I don't mind about the negative things that people say about it because that's the system.
Yeah.
That's what I think. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
And I know people who are listening have their own opinion.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
And I appreciate that too. But anyway, thanks for introducing yourself to the listeners. And of course, today we shall talk a lot about so many things that that we shall share with our listeners. Yeah. So my first question.
Yeah.
You're a teacher. Why did you choose to do this career of being a teacher in German, in where there's a big community of white people?
Yeah, such a good question. Before I came to Germany, I was doing many of the workshops because I grew up doing workshops in Uganda traditional music and dance in different organizations. So I grew up in the teacher-like, like someone who would really like being teacher because I've been giving a lot of lessons back in Uganda. And the first time I was in German, I think that was 2011. I also came like a person who's giving workshops and for music. So I think being a teacher, it is like, it's me. I feel it's like I can't live without sharing because I'm a person who likes to share with others what I know and also to learn from others. And a person to be in that caliber is a person who is ready to learn and ready to share, because being a teacher is not like always giving. it is also part of also learning. So, and I like learning so much, and I like also sharing what I have so much. So when I got an opportunity of coming to Germany, of course, I came as a volunteer in the school. You see how my connection comes in the school. And also, of course, I had a lot of experience with art, with dance, with music. I gave a lot of workshops at school. I was attending different artistic projects in the school. I was making projects with students. So it's like my life, I can say. Being in the teacher-like person, it's me. I feel like it's me sharing and learning from people. So, and I want to be surrounded all the time with people, and seeing how they develop, seeing how they are nurtured, seeing how I develop myself from other people. Because sometimes when I'm teaching, I see myself from the kid I'm teaching. I remember myself from maybe my childhood or something like that. So it is always like me being myself. Being a teacher is me being myself.
Wow, that's nice to hear.
Thank you.
And that's one of the reasons you chose to be a teacher in Germany. Yeah.
But of course, there are other reasons apart from those personal reasons. But of course, there are other reasons because I got the chance of when I came to Germany, I worked in the school, and from the school, working with teachers and students, I was really more inspired and got interested in being a teacher specifically for the Waldorf because they engage more of the artistic work than other public schools. So I got a chance. I talked to many teachers who were asking me why can't I really go ahead and do a course, a small course like a master's in education to be a Waldorf teacher. And I thought about it. It was the kind of opportunity. Of course, there are many challenges which come through how to become a teacher here in Germany, which process you have to pass through, the money, the language, and everything. But yeah, I got the people who were like supporting me in it. The teachers at the school where I volunteered, the people I was around with. So they supported me. Then I did master's in Waldorf pedagogy. So after that, of course, I looked for the school where to do practicals right now, where I'm doing now. And I'm really happy where I am, and I'm learning every day, and I'm sharing every day.
And I think by you being in front of a class, it's inspiring to other people like us to see fellow people teaching.
Yeah, it's really, that's why I call it like, so I was a little bit lucky on this because I came with a lot of friends who also want to do such kind of work, who have been artists, who have been working with me in Uganda. We have done a lot of projects together. But when they came to Germany, things were not the same because, of course, the language. And the language is part of, for us artists, we have to express ourselves. And if you don't know the language, of course, you can't express yourself more to people to understand you and to do what you want. So through those processes, there are many challenges also to do masters, the qualifications and the money needed to have, to go for more maybe education, to be a teacher as an African here in Germany. So it's really a big process and it's a challenge and it needs a lot of commitment and of course the support. I was insist on support because I couldn't be where I am without the support, even if I would like it so much. But if there are not people who are around me to push me to, to always support the ideas, to encourage me, because sometimes I felt like I was also quitting because of especially the language. I got a big problem with the language. I'm not linguistic. I'm not a person who learns very fast the languages. And German language is always challenging me, even today. There's something we want to express, something you want to share, something you want to learn, and the language you cannot understand. It's like today when I'm in the school, you attend the conferences, teachers' conferences, and they're speaking about the topics. Maybe you have more experience, maybe you have passed through it, but because of the language, the way you want to bring it out, you can't. But when you bring it out, it sounds like your point, your view is so light because of the language. So we when I say we, I mean like Ugandans or Africans, who have come from home without the German background as our language we know how to speak, and we come here, so we try to catch up with the language and to learn to attend school to do this. It's not easy, especially when you come here when you're already an adult. You had your career, you have your things, you have many things as an adult to think about. But then there's a language. Imagine starting to learn how to talk as a kid. So it's like also learning from zero. So it's challenging and needs a lot of like commitment, a lot of sacrifice you do. You leave other things to pass and you concentrate on the language. Yeah, really challenging.
I really understand the point of the language because I'm also a Ugandan from Uganda, now living in German, where I lived a lot that I'd done in my life, and I decided to come and live in German and try out my career here as an artist. But of course, language comes up, and then I chose to go to education. But then language comes up. But the point, I don't know what is your opinion, what do you look at this? Because for me, when I look at language being one of the challenges, but also one of the reasons for you to get something, maybe it's one of the things that can determine what you can do. I see it as kind of like a systematic racism or systematic discrimination of someone, because they will tell you are good at this, but you don't have the language. What is your opinion about that?
Yeah, I can take it in the two way. I take it in the two way because the environment you're in, they speak this language. The kids, as a teacher, you work with kids, and the kids, they speak that language, and it's their national and official language. So I cannot really take the whole blame to call it a systematic racism, because that's their culture. It's like we have Uganda, but apart from, of course, the colonial background, which turned everything upside down. Because also, when you go to China, also they speak their Chinese. You go to France, they speak French. So if you want to really engage and be part of that community, it is your responsibility to learn the language as a person who came in. But the challenge comes in where people use it as an advantage of you. That's where also I get the problem is, like in the regards to racism, because many people take it an advantage, putting it in the aspect of being a racist. You go apply for a job and you say, I have experience, whatever they put on internet for the job qualification, you have them, but then they put, like, for example, like if you have like A2 Dutch certificate, you can apply, and then you go to that office and you apply. Then when you reach there, they start speaking too much Dutch and you cannot understand what they are saying, and they put the blame on you who have come, especially like for 1 year in Germany or for 6 months. The qualification they called for, you have them, and you have even more experience about it. And when they give you practical work, like let's say in the youth center, you do it. Everything is perfect. Do you know how to deal with kids? You know what to do as an artist, you know. But when time comes where you have to give you a job, because they are, of course, other maybe Germans who have applied for this job, but they don't have the experience you have and the way you handle it. So they take this advantage of the language to give the job to the native or the native speaker or the person who works from here. That's where I also come out of, like, you know, this is really too much, because you have the guy, you ask for the qualification, I brought them out, and you cannot really say that the person who have stayed here for 1 year can speak fluent Dutch. There's this Dutch of, you know, of conversations. How are you? How was your day? How would things work? And there's a language we use in our fields. People master. So you can master your work, how to deal with students when you're teaching this or when you're working in this field. But you go to the office and they expect you to speak fluent in 1 year. Who does that? You know, that kind of putting it at the top of everything and kind of favoring their fellow natives, I also feel so hard. And it's a big challenge. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I understand you, what you say, when you said when the language becomes a decision for you to get something. When someone looks at you and defines you by the language, that's also where I find it. See, now you don't need to define me by the language, but you need to define me by who I am and what expertise and what experience I'm bringing on this job.
Yeah.
Or what am I sharing with the people around me? And I think not you speak more than 10 languages, but you can't only speak one language in your life, and that becomes difficult. That's where the problem is. But I look at it like, as much as we people who have come from other countries to live in German or to live in any country you have chose, and you're learning the language should be a requirement for you to live in that community, to learn and also to adopt, just like the way when Germans come to my country in Uganda, they need to learn English, but we don't define them to do something in our community because they don't know English.
Yeah.
Actually, I experienced when I have volunteers in my organization in Uganda who come when the English language is not very good, but we think we can learn from you.
Yeah.
And we don't make you to learn Luganda or Swahili. Yeah. But we tell you it would be nice for you to know some words to integrate very well. Yeah. So that's where I feel. But of course, you talked about colonial perspective, the white supremacy, how language is solved is one of the power.
Yeah.
If our language is spoken around the world, then we are powerful. The white supremacy comes in where, you see, that's where it is a small line between being integrated to accept it as a language and also it being used as a tool to discriminate you.
To put you down. Because just imagine our local languages where I come from in Uganda. When in the school, when you speak like me, I come from Uganda, but my mother language is Luganda. When I speak Luganda in the school, they call it vernacular and it is punishable. So, which means the people who design the system of education, putting my culture, especially my language, of which defines me, my identity, putting it like it's a punishable language, and putting the foreign language at the high peak, that someone who speaks English in that aspect in Uganda, or the official language, if someone who speaks English is someone who is intellect, is someone who is knowledgeable, someone who is a skill, and someone with much respect in the community. So you look at that colonial background and what you already called it systematic discrimination and superior inferior structure of it. It is already in place, and we people who come from there, the locals or the natives of those countries, I think we need to develop. We need to come to understand, to digest these things again. And then we see what went wrong. How can we empower ourselves? Because me personally here in Germany, sorry to maybe if I
it's okay, because that was going to be the next question. What is your view? What is your opinion? How can people, black people, Ugandans or Africans, raised either in Europe or raised wherever they are, or came as migrants in these places, can empower themselves to overcome this systematic racism against them? Because racism itself will never end, but how to
to stand with it, to live with it. Yeah, one of the things I always do, and I always talk to my friends, I don't want to use this thing of color things, the black or white friends. I have European friends, and they are really good friends. They really find so much to find a way of not putting the racism statements, and they're really good friends. But what we should learn also, we people who come from Africa or Uganda, that we should also tell these people to understand. We talk out how we feel. Because, giving an example, you, my brother Otako, when you face to do something, maybe from a friend, a close friend, and makes a statement out of ignorance, that they say, you black people, you have a lot of energy, oh, you black people, this statement, you black people, you don't keep time. You get what I'm saying? But you, Otako, you keep time and you're hardworking and you're focused. So there is a way we have to help them to understand that we have to create a way of helping our friends, our close friends we live in, the community we live in, because we live in a European community and the people we live in. However much we try ourselves to empower ourselves by learning the languages and to be punctual and to be like good people to fit in the community, there are these people surrounding us. We have also to engage them in these topics and to tell them, if they mention that statement, that you Africans, you are not punctual. Try to help them, not by engaging in the fights. So you are racist on what? But you find a way, next time if you have an appointment, be practical. You have an appointment, we meet at 10, be there at 9:45 or be there at 9:50, and then you come one day, 2 days, the same appointment. You come on time, then him, psychologically, of course he has to change the statement. He cannot say, Africans, come late. Because when they say it and you were there, he looks at you and then he comes back to his head and says, but Otako was on time. And Otako he's an African, but he keeps time.
But to just cut you short, don't you think that is like you want to blame again the other side of the story? Why not tell someone exactly what you feel? Like, please, you mentioned this statement, I don't like it.
Yeah.
And doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
And it's stereotype. I don't need to practically show you one time, second time. I feel like I need to tell you out right away.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I got you wrong.
No. You didn't get me wrong. But we have said these statements. And our grants, when you go into history, Martin Luther King, the Lumumbas, and many ancestors have been saying these statements. These people know the statements. We talk to them. They know, most of them, they know these statements. But what they lack is to see the practical stuff. As a practical person.
No, I don't think that someone who's having stereotype challenges is lacking to see. It's the problem that maybe we don't tell them. If I don't tell you, if you're my friend, you're European or you are, I don't like generalizing, maybe say, let me be clear, you're a white German person. And I tell you, oh, you know what? You made a statement that really makes me feel bad. And I don't want it.
Yeah, it's good to say it out, but also to act it. There are two things. I have friends. When you mention a racism statement, they tell it straight away. Let's say, for example, Africans, you don't keep time. Tomorrow, you say, and someone says, no, you cannot say that. You cannot generalize Africans, they don't keep time. You see, this is the question. Tomorrow, you meet at 10. And the person who have been saying, Africans, you can't generalize, comes late at 11 without any reason. How do you expect that person to take your statement to be right?
That person needs to be clear and say, Otako, you don't keep time.
Yes.
Otako, you need to keep time. I don't want someone to generalize it.
Yeah. Generalization is bad, but you always put it in the statements. And of course, we had many proverbs also where you come from. I want to pass it here because it is also important. In my language, we say, omulya mamba abeera omu n'avumaganya ekika kyonna. In that proverb, they try to say, it is one person from maybe from a family or from where you come from, maybe Uganda, you represent Uganda. You are an ambassador of Uganda. Whatever you do here, you represent Uganda. Whatever you do here, people will say, but Ugandans. And they say, give a reference. Even at the university, they call it a reference. A reference it does not say the whole country works like that, but someone stands up and says, yeah, I have a friend here, Otako, comes from Uganda. Last time we had to meet at 10, he came at 11. So how can you tell me that? So don't generalize, people are not like that. But they say, give a sample, because you can't sample everything. So it is within us. Generalizing is really, I disagree with it. I don't like those statements. I'm among the people who always say, don't generalize. Say, Otako, so Edwin. But in our heads, how we grow up, in the community, in our culture, it is all about generalizing because we all came from the community. It comes from the community aspect. That's why I say, we. When they mention we, you are not alone. And we, from our culture, it is part of us. Whether we like it or not, we have been growing with we. So that's why I believe more doing practical. You mentioned straight away that that statement is not right, that Africans don't keep time. But then don't forget the most important thing, according to me, is to prove wrong. You don't need to say, okay, tomorrow I'm going to show you I'm going to be in time. Don't mention anything. But be with something in an engagement or an appointment and come on time. So the next time when he makes that same mistake, he remembers that Otako, when he had a meeting yesterday, he was on time. So coming into head is like I'm contradicting myself. So which African are you talking about?
Anyway, so what is the other way that people can empower themselves?
Yeah. To speak to the point of like Africans, like artists, because I'm also an artist. That
are you putting artists? Are you putting Africans, or are you talking about?
The first example I want to give is like for
empower themselves.
Yeah, I'm giving like if you have any skill or any talent or something you have been doing at home. Of course, when we come to these countries, we face a lot of challenges: language, where to stay, the new system, culture shock. So we have to create like a space for ourselves. Create a space for ourselves to practice what you used to do, and always to find the community which gives you more positive energy. It's like I don't live in Marburg, so I live in a different city. But me coming to visit you, and we have a simple talk, we share food, we talk, we do projects, I get the energy. So I think it is more important to also to learn how to make our communities, because of course we cannot make the people who doesn't know your backgrounds, your cultures, how you do things, to give you more support. Everything will be new to them, and every time you'll be like crashing. So we should put, I think, more communities and to speak out, as you have been saying, to speak out things which are wrong. We say, no, this and this does not work. This and this does not work. And to share. We have a problem from our cultures not to share our biographies. We keep it to ourselves. But if I share my experience, like Otako always, we call ourselves and say, my friend, I had this experience at school. I was working with a kid and that did and this happens. And it's when you talk, I saw that, this and this and this. But how I handled it, so we give like solutions, kind of like moral support and sharing and boosting ourselves. So I think that's also very important to cope up with this environment.
Okay, so good. Thank you so much, Edwin Matovu, for such a very good conversation about this issue. But anyway, because of time, I would like to say our listeners, thank you so much for joining us in this part 1 of this conversation with Edwin Matovu. And please join us in the second conversation with Edwin Matovu as we continue to talk about how can we as Black people or Africans or living in a white community majority environment, and how can we empower ourselves? How can we use our skills to support each other? And also by sharing our personal true stories, we continue. So, do you have anything to say before we go to part 2 of this conversation?
No, I think for now, we let them wait for the part 2.
Hear my true story.
Yeah, our dear listener, thank you so much for listening to Hear My True Story podcast. It has been me, myself, Otako, with our guest, Edwin Matovu, and I hope that you enjoyed that wonderful conversation. Yes, and if you'd like to support this wonderful podcast, please kindly go to hearmytruestory.com. There you can subscribe and be a supporter of the podcast with the little money that you have. And if you cannot be a supporter of the podcast with any little money that you have, you can also tell a friend to know about the podcast. It is always a great thing when you share about this wonderful podcast. Thank you for listening, and thank you for supporting Hear My True Story.
We not only have voices for a podcast, but also faces for YouTube. Don't miss your next episode. Hear My True Story.
Thank you for listening to our podcast, Music by Edwin Matovu, hosted and produced by Otako. Subscribe to our podcast for more stories and visit us on our website, hearmytruestory.com, for more stories. All the links are listed in the show notes of this podcast.